Meg here. Once again, I'm going to get rid of this. Meg spoke to this club a couple years ago about Sustain Charlotte, and because we've adopted the environment and sustainability as our seventh area of focus, I wanted to get her here again to give us an update on things that Sustain Charlotte is involved with and things that she happens to be aware of relative to our environment and doing what we can to make sure we preserve it. So just a bit of background here. Prior to her work with Sustain Charlotte, Meg designed and implemented original research programs as a U.S. Fulbright grant recipient in Croatia and the National Science Foundation East Asia and Pacific Summer Institute Fellow in Japan. While completing her dissertation research in coastal South Texas, she advocated for responsible coastal management, protection of freshwater flows to estuaries, and sustainable fisheries. She holds a BS in ecology and evolutionary biology from the University of Connecticut and a PhD in marine sciences from the University of Texas at Austin. She taught project-based mathematics to ninth grade students at West Charlotte High School through Project Lift and the 1080 Foundation. An experienced educator at both the university and K-12 level, Meg enjoys developing educational materials and reaching diverse groups of stakeholders in relevant and innovative ways. So Meg, without any further ado, first of all, thank you for being here and take it.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And thank you all for having me here today. As was mentioned, I was with you all about 2 years ago, and I'll give a little bit of background information about what Sustain Charlotte does, but I also want to share some more information from an environmental perspective. Last time that I spoke with you, I think we talked a lot about kind of social equity and how transportation choices give people access to opportunities. So today what I want to do is really focus more on how the way that our community is built and how the ways that we get around really impact the environment. I've been at Sustain Charlotte as the Director of Engagement and Impact since 2014. And the organization was founded back in 2010 by our executive director, Shannon Binns, and he recognized that Charlotte is one of the most rapidly growing large metro areas in the country. And we haven't really, as a city, had a comprehensive plan for how the city would grow since 1975. If you follow any of the work that City Council does, I apologize, my dogs are making strange noises in the background. The City Council passed a comprehensive plan just a few months ago, and that will really guide the vision for Charlotte's growth moving forward.
Meg,
Meg,
can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
There's a lot of feedback at your end. I'm not sure if it's you or if it's in the club.
I don't think I have anything on my end that would be giving feedback.
Ellie, do you know what it might be? Well, go ahead. We'll just do the best we can.
Sorry about that. I don't know what's going on. It wasn't doing it earlier when we were talking, right?
No.
It kind of sounds like it's very echoey in the room that you're in.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go I'll try going into the closet. See if that helps.
I am so sorry.
No worries. I don't know why it's doing that.
She's going into the closet.
See if this helps.
Or you could just. I hide.
Okay, let's.
Oh, that's even worse.
I'm gonna mute.
That's echoey part of the house. Okay, we'll see if this is better. Is this any better so far?
Yes.
Okay, we'll try this. Now I've got sun behind me, but that's okay. I guess you won't see my face as well. I'll sit on the floor. Okay, sorry about that. It's all an experiment. Oh, now I've got to talk. Okay. So Sustain Charlotte was really founded to address some of the growth challenges that we face as a community. And our mission statement is that we inspire choices that lead to a healthy, equitable, and vibrant community for generations to come. And we do that primarily through advocating for land use and transportation choices. I first want to show you these United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And as you know, not only the population of Charlotte is rapidly growing, but also the population of the world is rapidly growing. And there are really profound inequities in Charlotte as well as around the world. So as the environment is impacted by transportation choices and land use choices, we know that not all people kind of bear the brunt of those choices equally. So the ones that we really focus on at Sustain Charlotte are sustainable cities and communities, reducing inequalities, and affordable and clean energy, especially in the transportation sector. And all of those really are critical to addressing climate change as well. So a lot of these goals are relevant, not only at a global level, but here in Charlotte as well. Now I'm being mobbed by dogs here, sorry. Okay, so I want to show you a series of 3 maps. If you came to my presentation 2 years ago, you probably saw these, but they're so poignant that I always like to show them. These are created by the Center for Applied GIS Science at UNC Charlotte, and they really show how land use has changed in our area since 1976. And what you're looking at here are the counties in North Carolina, so it does not include the South Carolina counties. Everything in green that's shown here was forest and farmland back in 1976. So about 95% of the land back in 1976 in the entire region was covered in forest and farmland, and only 3% of our land was developed. So you can see that orange or brown color is developed land. And most of that developed land was really around the city of Charlotte, and some of what at that time were small towns surrounding Charlotte. And 2% of the land was covered in water. And the entire human population in this region back in 1976 was just over 1 million people. And the human footprint, or the amount of developed land per person, was 0.08 acres. So what I want you to keep in mind is that as we go forward in our time, my dog thinks I'm giving a presentation to him, sorry. As we go forward in time, this pattern is going to change dramatically. So by 2006, so just 30 years later from that first map, there has been an 8-time increase, or eightfold increase in the amount of developed land. It went from 3% to 24%. And the population in that time didn't even quite double. So what we're really seeing here is a pattern of sprawl. And the human footprint increased by a factor of 5 just in those 30 years. And the 2 things that really haven't changed is now we've got more people living in this area. They're sharing the same amount of land as before, and they're having to share the same amount of water as before. So more people, same amount of resources, and a pattern of sprawl developing. And then this is a projection of what our region could look like by 2030 if we continue to develop in a sort of business as usual scenario. And so what we're trying to do at Sustain Charlotte is educate people about how the ways that we use our land impact our quality of life. And we all want to have access to green spaces. We all want to have healthy air. We want to have healthy water. And that's pretty difficult to do when we have a rapidly increasing human footprint. So I want to talk about some of the specific environmental challenges that are associated with sprawl. One of them is the loss of trees. So between 1985 and 2008, Mecklenburg County lost 1/3 of its tree canopy. And in that same time period, the city of Charlotte lost 49% of its tree canopy. So with rapid growth and sprawl often comes a loss of tree canopy. And Charlotte is still struggling to meet the goal of achieving 50% tree canopy by the year 2050. And it's going to be difficult to do without not only planting a lot of new trees, and there's a great nonprofit called Trees Charlotte that partners with the city to do that, but we also need to preserve our existing trees. If you have been around any of the kind of inner core neighborhoods, the ones that are within about 2 or 3 miles of Uptown, we have a lot of beautiful, old, but aging trees, many of which are reaching the end of their lifespan. And so we have a lot of trees in neighborhoods where almost all of the trees are the same species, and that makes them more vulnerable to diseases. when you have a more diverse tree canopy, that reduces not only the chance that any one species will die off all at one time due to a disease, or if all the trees are planted at the same time, they all kind of reach their end of life at the same time. So it's really important to plant trees in a way that supports a healthy tree canopy. You need big trees and medium-sized trees and small trees in the right places as well. So one challenge that we often hear, especially from people that are disabled, is that many trees have been planted too close to sidewalks, and as they grow, the roots really grow into the sidewalks and push up the sidewalks, and that can create a hazard for people. So the key message here is by reducing sprawl, we can preserve our tree canopy, but we also need to be thinking about how to add trees, healthy trees, back into Charlotte. We also know that as sprawl occurs, species experience the impacts of sprawl differently. So we can see over on the left is on the outer part of the diagram, there is some edge habitat, and in the inside is the interior habitat. And we don't really have bears in Mecklenburg County as far as I know, but we do have them in the region. This is just kind of a cartoon to show you that there are certain species that really thrive on kind of those edge habitats, so maybe in yards and suburban areas, but there are also species that need large tracts of undisturbed land to thrive. And as sprawl continues, you saw in those maps, our habitats are getting more fragmented. So many interior habitats and species can decrease while some of those edge habitats and species increase. So depending on what type of species are important in different areas, the patterns of growth can really affect what type of habitat and how much habitat is available for critical species that are valuable to us and valuable just for their own intrinsic sake. We have about 3,000 miles of creeks in Mecklenburg County, and we also have an increasing amount of paved or impervious surface, and that is one of the main drivers of creek pollution. And this happens because when water falls as rain or precipitation, in a natural cycle, it will be intercepted by trees or vegetation, and it will slowly be absorbed into the soil, and then it will be released into creeks slowly, and there's filtering that naturally happens as part of that. But what happens when we have a lot of paved surfaces and rooftops is that natural process is cut off. So we have more, you see that big arrow in the second diagram, we have more surface runoff in that scenario. And that does a couple of things. First of all, it carries with it any contaminants that may be on those surfaces and pollutes the streams chemically and biologically. Dogs walk around, and dog waste is a huge challenge for stream water quality because it can cause bacterial blooms. And also, it causes physical erosion of the creek bed. So you saw in this previous picture here, you can see how steep this creek bank is. That's a sign of an unhealthy creek, because when that stormwater rushes into the creek, it physically erodes the sides of the creeks. So we have an increasing amount of paved surface in Mecklenburg County, not only because people are growing and building homes, but they're also building driveways, we're widening roads. And so if we can grow in a more upwards fashion and take advantage of some development in areas that are already paved without having to pave new areas and put in a lot of new roofs, that is better for the natural water cycle. We also have a real challenge with air pollution in Mecklenburg County. We're kind of right on the brink of what's considered not being an attainment for the chief pollutant of concern in Mecklenburg County, which is ground level ozone. And that is a respiratory irritant. So when we breathe it in, it irritates our lungs. It's especially dangerous to children whose lungs are still developing, people with asthma and heart disease, any type of underlying medical condition, and also to older adults. And so that ground level ozone is formed in Mecklenburg County, the main source is tailpipe emissions from vehicles, and it combines with other chemicals in the presence of sunlight. So that's why we have the ozone season in the summer. And so any day that you see an ozone action alert, if you can work from home or reduce the amount of driving that you do on those days, that's really important. Sure. we need to support other transportation choices so we're not as dependent on driving our cars. And I wanted to share this interesting little takeaway from the pandemic. There was of course, a decrease in driving in the first couple months of the pandemic, and so that the SAH, or stay-at-home period, comparing 2019 when most people were still driving to work, and then comparing the yellow, which was the 2020 stay-at-home period, there was dramatic decreases in the vehicle counts between those 2 years, and that resulted in after the Mecklenburg County staff did all their analysis and ensured that it wasn't just due to chance. We had a significant increase in the percentage of green or good days for air quality in 2020. And actually in 2020, there were no days that even got into the unhealthy for vulnerable groups or the unhealthy range. And also, the ways that we get around really impact not just our local air quality, but also our contribution to global climate change. You can see it there, the second highest sector for greenhouse gas emissions in North Carolina is transportation. So transportation accounts for almost a third of greenhouse gas emissions. So those are some of the environmental challenges associated with our over-reliance on driving, which in turn is related to our over-sprawling growth patterns. So if we instead thought about other forms of transportation as freedom, not only for people, but also for a healthy environment, we're definitely not anti-car, but if we have choices for how we can get around sometimes, it can really help to kind of move the needle on the health of our environment. So the approach we take at Sustain Charlotte is smart growth, which means really approaching development and transportation in a way that supports a mix of building types and uses. It's about diverse housing and transportation options so that people can live within walking, biking, or public transit distance of their jobs, of a lot of their daily needs like grocery stores, kids' schools, and other places that people would go on a daily basis. It also has a very strong emphasis on community engagement and physically and relationally making sure that people are connected to their communities. This is just a little schematic of a complete community. This was part of that, the city's outreach for the Charlotte Future 2040 Comprehensive Plan, showing the different forms of transportation and the different types of destinations that people might reach on a daily basis. And I know when I talked to you a couple of years ago, I talked a lot about some of the different initiatives in Sustain Charlotte. So I'll give you some of the current ones that we're working on and ways that we often see community members get involved. And I would be happy to follow up with any of you who may want to learn more about any of these and get involved. So my email address is in the presentation. And Jenny, you're welcome to share the presentation with anyone who may want that or may want my contact info. I'd love to kind of connect with people after presentations and get people plugged in. So one thing you can do is to advocate for convenient and affordable transportation. Even if you don't ride public transit or you don't ride a bicycle or walk much for transportation, think about the fact that it's estimated about 400,000 people are going to move to the Charlotte area and be born in the Charlotte area between now and 2040. And if all of those people drive a car, you've already seen how bad the traffic is, and we've talked about some of the environmental impacts of all that driving. So we really need to be investing in those transportation choices now so that we are not kind of gridlocked in the future and we still have clean air and clean water. You can also look into joining our Charlotte Regional Transportation Coalition. This is a coalition that Sustain Charlotte facilitates. And we meet on a monthly basis on Zoom. We have about 50 neighborhood and community-based organizations that all come together for the common purpose of supporting equitable transportation, ensuring that everybody, regardless of whether they own a car or not, has access to a quality of life in the city and really across the region. You can also support bike and micro-mobility infrastructure. So when I say micro-mobility, I'm talking about scooters and all the other small types of, bike scale technology that might be coming in the future. And there are definitely some growing pains here. There's not right now a great solution for parking scooters and often not really a safe place to ride them or to ride bikes. But what I'm showing the pictures here is a project that we partnered with the city of Charlotte on. Back in 2015, we started advocating for some protected bike lanes in Uptown because there are dozens of lanes of traffic that crisscross east and west across Uptown, but they're almost solely for cars. Our streets are our largest shared public space, but almost all of that space is really just designed for the needs of people in cars, and the needs of people walking and biking have really been left out. And so now there are protected bike lanes in Uptown Charlotte that connect the Irwin Creek Greenway and the Little Sugar Creek Greenway. So there's a safe place for people of all ages and abilities to ride bikes. We want to see that in all neighborhoods in Charlotte, not just in Uptown. We can also find ways to advocate for pedestrian infrastructure. Everyone deserves, safe sidewalks and safe crosswalks to get across the road. You could also organize a mobility audit. We have a nice toolkit for doing this. It's basically getting together with your friends or neighbors and walking around your community and just making some simple observations about the conditions that people face when they walk. Are the sidewalks wide enough? Is there enough lighting? Is there a safe way to cross the street at the intersections? And then we can train you to share those results with your city council members. And if it's an area where there's bus stops, you can share it with cats. And we have done this with a variety of neighborhoods, and they have shared the results with elected officials, and some have seen investments and changes made as a result of that. We also host events to celebrate walking, biking, and public transit, and to introduce people to using those different forms of transportation. And we have a great volunteer or attendance opportunity coming up on October 24th. It's our Biketoberfest event. It's going to be outdoors, all socially distanced. And this is an event, it's beginner friendly, and it's designed to introduce you to the ease and fun of riding a bicycle for transportation. So we have a route set up that, again, is beginner friendly. It uses bike lanes and the rail trail and the greenways so that you're not going to be out there like riding down South Boulevard on your bike. And you'll have a passport, and you'll get different stamps at the locations that are along the route. And then we have a fun after party back at Triple C Brewing. So it's a fundraiser for Sustain Charlotte. There's a peer fundraising opportunity as part of your participation, but you don't have to do that unless you want to. You can also do that if you don't want to ride a bike. But you can learn more about the event, get your tickets, or sign up to volunteer at biketoberfestdlt.org, and I'd love to see you out there. And then just finally, I want to let you know that we are one of many organizations across the Charlotte area that are working to protect the environment. And this is definitely not an exhaustive list. There are many other wonderful organizations, a lot of smaller ones, probably some larger ones that I've forgotten on here. Clean Air NC, formerly known as Clean Air Carolina, does a lot of work to protect our air quality. Catawba River Keeper is protecting our creeks and the Catawba River. Sierra Club works, of course, across the country, and they have a North Carolina chapter as well as a local group in the Charlotte area. The Catawba Lands Conservancy and Carolina Thread Trail is really working to ensure that land is set aside and that people have access to trails. I mentioned Tree Charlotte, protecting the tree canopy and planting trees. And then Keep Mecklenburg Beautiful is actually, it's not a nonprofit, but it is a citizen board that is appointed by the Mecklenburg County Commissioners to basically combat littering so that our streets, creeks remain free of trash. So you can go on the websites for any of those organizations. I'm sure many of them would love to have volunteers, and they all have great programming that you can get plugged into. So finally, I just encourage you to sign up for our weekly e-newsletter that I put that together, and I make sure we have a lot of good content in there to share with you all. And we're also on social media. So we're posting a lot about different events that we hold. We had two guided green walks this week and one online event about a regional transit planning process. So really encourage you to follow us and get plugged into the work that we do. So I'm happy to take any questions, and thank you all so much for your time today. And I apologize for my very persistent Zoom here.
We all clapped here. Can you hear us?
I can hear you, yes.
For you, although it's hard to see. And well, of course, I had to change the batteries to the microphone like at the best time ever. So Meg, thank you so much. I'm sure our club has questions. I have I'm going to start you off with the first question. What have you guys and then the other organizations like you done to approach corporate leaders in the uptown Charlotte area? A lot of the folks, especially the families that work in the corporate centers, live out in the outskirts, my husband and myself included. What have you guys done to advocate for people being able to stay home and actually companies allowing employees to stay home in order to cut down on the amount of cars and exhaust going into the air and, just general traffic?
That's a really great question, and working from home certainly has a lot of potential to cut down on the amount of driving that we do. We partner with companies in a number of ways. We participate in a lot of the Wells Fargo Green Team calls, and Bank of America has a My Environment team. There's also a kind of a peer gathering of professionals who are working in those larger companies on sustainability, and they meet for a lunch bunch every couple months and just talk about best practices. And I think what they're finding is that this, first of all, this is a very competitive job market, and employees who have a choice about where to go and work are going to choose the employers that give them the flexibility and the options that they need to have a balanced quality of life. So I think a lot of the benefits of working from home have become apparent to employers, and they're adapting based on what their employees are asking for and demanding. So I know that not every employer is as flexible as we would like them to be. Also there are jobs that do need to be done in person. A lot of that essential work just can't happen remotely. So one thing we've also been doing is countering the myth that everybody will be able to work from home. We know that essential workers still need access to public transportation, so we can't cut back on bus frequency, for example. If it previously would have taken the person who cleans the hospital room 45 minutes to get to work on the bus, it shouldn't take them an hour and a half because bus service gets cut. So we're happy to see that CATS has continued to provide high frequency bus service, but we know that really has to be increased beyond where it was prior to the pandemic, because it on average takes somebody 90 minutes one way to get to work on public transit. We have a lot of people that are spending 3 hours a day just getting to and from work. So I hope that answered kind of the question of employers recognizing the value of working from home, but also needing to still advocate for people that do have to do their jobs in person.
Thanks. All right. Anyone in the room? Let me grab my mask. Kevin, here, I'm going to pass the.
Thank you, Kelly. Meg, thank you for your presentation. It was great. One comment, first of all, I love presentations like this because they help us to understand some of the connections that we have with our own work as a club, whether it's cleaning streets and keeping storm sewers clean, planting trees on behalf of Trees Charlotte. We can kind of see the connectivity and helping to make our communities better and more sustainable. But Meg, quick question for you. I noticed that over the historical aspects from 1976, even through the projected, I can't remember what the end date was, 2040, that the amount of water stayed the same. Is that actually accurate? I mean, is it actually still going to be constant at 2%? Or do you think there's going to be some diminution of those water resources as well?
I think water is definitely going to be a challenge for our region, and there are two river basins that were shown on that map. There's the Catawba River Basin, and then there's the Yadkin River Basin off on the eastern boundary. So one of the questions that that regional leaders have been grappling with. Of course, we have, Lake Norman and Mountain Island Lake, where we get our drinking water from. That's a result of dams being built on the Catawba River. And so they're questioning, are we going to have enough water in the coming decades, both for households as well as industrial use? And so they're having to figure out, just even if the current climate conditions stay the same, but our population growth increases, we might have to, deepen those reservoirs so that more water can be held there. But even, thinking longer term, if climate change reduces the severity and frequency of droughts, we really might have to make some more difficult decisions about how water is being used in our region. This has all, historically been an area without the severe water stresses that we see out in the Western United States. I mean, nobody could have imagined. Definitely scientists were predicting it, but the average American wouldn't have predicted that the Colorado River would look as dried up as it is right now. So there are millions of people that rely on that Colorado River as a water source. And I think there's a message here about the resilience of nature. Nature can handle a lot of fluctuations and still support us. But when we put too many stresses on the system, then things do start to break down. So it's really important, I think, that we consider the future water needs that we may have as a region and ensure that we're doing all that we can to grow in a sustainable way so that we don't get ourselves into a situation where, everybody has a giant lawn that needs to be watered and that we have, a lot of industries that would not exist without having access to water. A lot of the agriculture that occurs in different parts of the U.S. is very water intensive. And so there are going to be a lot of tough questions that will have to be answered and trade-offs that will probably have to be made in the future.
Thank you very much. And that's it. No more showers for me.
We have 4 acres, and my husband and I were like, we should just get AstroTurf. Just like, I don't want to deal with this. Can you imagine? Well, it's mostly forest. So anyone else in the room have a question for Meg? All right. Anyone online? Oh, wait, just kidding. I'm Marja.
Hi. I just wanted to ask you, you said one of the biggest pollutants was electricity, and how are we not, dependent on hydroelectricity more than coal burning in Mecklenburg, or am I mistaken? Now, how is electricity responsible for majority of the pollutants? Is just my question right now.
So yeah, I was really showing that to show that transportation is the second highest sector that contributes to pollution, to carbon pollution specifically. I think the electric sector there, it's reflecting the burning of fossil fuels. So coal for the power plants, and oil that's used to heat homes. And I'm sure there's other sources of energy. I will admit I'm not really an expert on the how the energy sector produces the greenhouse gases, but I would imagine it's probably mostly due to the coal plants and burning of natural gases. That'd be a great question for Clean Air NC. They rebranded a few months ago.
Actually, I know a nonprofit, and she was saying that a couple of years ago that they were working with Clean Air Carolina, that the not the dump trucks, but the all the big trucks, the trucks that are moving like ground, rocks and the cement trucks, those are the ones that are actually really contributing to the bad air, with the bad air. So they were trying to get like conversion things on those trucks, but I think it's just so expensive that they just can't afford it. The companies can't afford it. So, but I mean, with all the construction we've got going on, those trucks are just making multiple trips just to one site.
Right. So I think what they're mainly talking about there is there's a pollutant called PM10, PM 2.5, or it's particulate matter that's smaller than 2.5 microns. So it gets deep into our lungs. And so diesel vehicles are a major source of that PM 2.5.
Yeah. The masks are probably helping us more than we know, right? We got to take a page out of China's, they wear masks all the time there. So online, anyone have a question for Meg? All right. Well, Meg, this was great. Thank you so much. I definitely I spent time in Croatia, and I serve on my town's planning board and do land use. So we should just get together for a drink sometime. Sorry, guys. Meg and I are going to have a date.
That sounds fantastic.
I'm sure we have lots to talk about. So thank you so much. And we are going to now move on to Amarja. Would you like to draw the winning raffle ticket? Moves her pizza. Looks like it was good. You hated it. Just pull one out. N47. It's like a bingo. It's like a bingo wheel.
818874.
Ranjit. Okay, he wants his half to go into Dilworth Charities. Yes. And Meg, to thank you for is she still here? Where did she go? Oh, I guess she's gone.
Yeah, she just texted that, thank you all for hosting me. Feel free to contact me at, she gives me her email address if you have any follow-up questions. I know we got a thing saying her bandwidth was low, so it may have cut her out.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jenny. All right. Well, if anyone doesn't have anything else, anyone need to do interpretive dance or no, I always go for interpretive dance. I don't know why I just think it's so weird. We're now gonna sing the happy song. That's what I'm gonna threaten people with. Don't make us sing Kevin's happy song. All right. If we could do our 5-way test, please, and pass the blue bins up. Thanks, Tom. Of all the things we think, say, or do, first,